I stumbled on this video on my FYP where an American journalist, by the name Carlson Tucker, who was asking the ambassador of Israel to America about doing DNA to ascertain who the real Jews or the real owners of the land. The conversation get really busy because the minister was saying that the descendant of Abraham are the real owners of the land. Carlson, the journalist, said he read from Genesis 15 that land passed through Euphrates and all of that, the Nile River, blah, blah, blah. And the argument got really very interesting. I want us to watch it. And when I come back, we'll begin a conversation around what we've watched. Credible Guns original creator of every content and students into this episode. Guys, let's go watch it. I'll be right back.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean, maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do that. If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this is the only country in the world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
What about people who convert to Judaism? Would they have a right?
Well, you've just said.
I mean,
that
there are
it's
converts to Judaism, so
you just told
they
me,
can make Aliyah. They may not have.
You've just
DNA.
told me that it doesn't matter. You told me moments ago, trying to keep track, that it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God or whether or not you practice Torah Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism, which is something else that I don't even know if we should. I don't even know what that means. But it doesn't matter whether you're, quote, a religious Jew or not. What matters is that you are part of the Jewish people to whom God gave this land that extends from the Nile to the Euphrates. And so if you believe that, wouldn't you want to know with a burning passion who those people are? And because of science, we can now know who those people are. So why aren't we finding out?
I guess you could propose a DNA test for everybody who comes here, everybody who lives here. But the point
I'm comfortable with secular nation states where none of this is done on the basis of blood. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'll just say that.
But there are people who may not have bloodlines, but who have converted to Judaism. Are they going to be able to live here? Are you going to kick them out?
By your standards, they can't live here.
No,
because you just told me that they have a right to live here because God gave them the land because they're the descendants of Abram.
They're the descendants of Abraham. But if they're the spiritual descendants of Abraham and they've now decided that they're converting to Judaism, then do they have a right to live in Israel?
Well, there's a whole legal literature in Israel on that question. And my understanding is that certain types of modern Judaism qualify a person and other types don't.
Israel is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose.
U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee has sparked outrage over comments made during an interview with American commentator Tucker Carlson.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
Huckabee also called Area C in the occupied West Bank, where repeated settler attacks have forced much of the Palestinian population to flee, part of Israel.
So they're moving all these Americans, people from around the world, into settlements subsidized by Americans in the West Bank.
Now, they're not moving them from around the world to the settlements. They're people who make Aliyah. They come.
I'm just saying.
These are Israelis who live in Israel.
Well, there are a lot of people.
And Area C is Israel.
Okay.
Several Arab countries have responded by denouncing Huckabee's statement as reckless, provocative, and irresponsible. But they aren't new. In June, the ambassador told Bloomberg News that a Palestinian state in the occupied West Bank is no longer a US policy goal, and that Israel's Muslim neighbors could give up their land instead to create one. The ambassador's apparent disregard for regional sovereignty did not stop there. He also listed several neighboring countries, many of them close US allies, as fronts in Israel's regional war.
I keep hearing Israel's fighting a 7-front war. What are those 7 fronts?
Well, you got Lebanon. You have Egypt. Now, Egypt is not an active war, but you have the Muslim Brotherhood within Egypt. You've got the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan. You've got Syria.
Wait, they're fighting a war with Jordan?
With the Muslim Brotherhood that is in Jordan, not directly with Jordan, not the government of Jordan.
But are they...
You've got Hezbollah, Houthis.
In Yemen.
You have Hamas in Gaza. You have the threats that come from Iran.
But Huckabee did have praise for one country.
One place is an exception is the Emiratis, and I love those folks because they are so progressive, but they're really trying to do things that are beyond what anyone else in the region. They change their textbooks. They teach that Israel is not a nation they should hate or seek to annihilate.
His apparent disregard for the sovereignty of existing countries in the region, including Palestinian rights to statehood, has alarmed several Arab states and US allies. It marks yet another step in which US policy seems to be increasingly out of line with its Arab neighbors and increasingly deferent to Israel's government.
This identity that forms, that is the ticket to the right that you keep referring to. And who are those people in 2026?
Who gets to decide who are the people of the covenant in 2026? Carlson? DNA? Or God? God made the covenant. God gets to decide with whom he made the covenant. So how do we know God's answer to the question? Let's take a look at Mark 12:28. A scribe asks the famous Jew, what is the most important commandment in the Torah? And he answers, Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad. So he probably answered in Hebrew, maybe in Greek, certainly not in English, but for our Christian brethren that are listening, in America, he answered the first with these 2 verses in Deuteronomy. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, and all your means. Now, I want to continue in Deuteronomy. It's very important to be able to understand this whole issue. So another 4 verses. And these words, which I command you this day, shall be upon your heart, and you shall teach them to your sons, and speak to them when you sit in your house, and you walk on the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your arm. And they shall be ornaments between your eyes, tortoposts between your eyes. And you shall inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. So in this small paragraph, there's a lot of commandments. So one commandment possibly you could say is, hear, O Israel, it's like commandment, listen to me. The Lord, our God, the Lord is one. You have to believe that there's not more than one God. Now another commandment, you shall love the Lord your God. Now another commandment, these words I command you this day, this should be upon your heart. You have to be always in hearts. And you have to teach them to your sons. Right? That's another commandment. We have to teach these words to our children. And we should speak of these words when we sit down in your house and you walk on the way. Wherever we go, wherever we are, we have to keep in mind this fundamental commandment that God is one. These words of the Shema. And when you lie down, when you rise, so that means to say when we go to sleep and when we wake up, we have to recite the words of the Shema. That's a commandment. We say Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We recite this whole paragraph when we go to sleep, just before going to sleep, and when we wake up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand or your arm. So here's the thing, here's the answer to the question. This is going to be a sign. And this is what's going to distinguish you as a person of the covenant. There's a lot of commandments in the Torah. We have the 10 commandments, right? But just in this paragraph alone, there's a whole bunch of commandments. But there's only a few. We'll discover hopefully what the others are. But there's this one commandment of wearing tefillin, binding them on your arm and keeping these words. Inside these boxes are parchments where the words of this chapter are inscribed on parchment. So we have to bind these words on our arm. And that's going to be a sign. That's going to be a sign that distinguishes you. It shows you are a person of the covenant. So, people might make counterfeit money. And when you print a dollar bill, so that it's built into the system ways to identify if something is counterfeit or not. So in terms of tefillin, if you want to find out if the person who's wearing them is a counterfeit Jew or a real Jew, it's really easy because you don't have any real counterfeiters that are doing that know what they're doing. They can produce tefillin like this that are manufactured leather boxes painted black with straps, leather straps, and then the parchments, the 4 paragraphs inscribed. How many counterfeit scribes exist in the world? There's really, some. If you take a look back here, I have my certification. So I've been certified already for many years, decades. You have some people that are writing that aren't certified, but in reality is that you're not going to find non-Jews writing. It's just like 1 in a million. And if I would take a look at the parchments, I would say, this is not kosher. This is it's very obvious. So there's no way to counterfeit. People have tried, but when I look at tefillin, the parchments inside, there's traditions, really hundreds of laws and thousands of laws to determine whether they're kosher or not. So I'm an expert, so if I look at tefillin, I know if they're kosher or not, and if I can say that they're kosher, they're definitely written by someone who is part of the covenant. So that's what God is telling us when He says it's an oath, it's a sign. This proves that this is not a counterfeit person. This is the real person of the covenant. That's one of the signs. There's 3 signs in total. In the Torah, out of all the 613 commandments, there are 3 commandments that the Torah describes as an oath, a sign, something that distinguishes that this is a Jew. Anybody can eat kosher. Anybody could give charity. Those are mitzvahs. That doesn't distinguish a person as a Jew. You have, let's say, Gentiles eating kosher. They're living in a Jewish old age home, and all the food there's kosher. Does that make them Jewish? No. Is that a sign that they're Jewish? No. If someone is wearing kosher tefillin, and here's the thing: the tradition goes back so far, all the way to Mount Sinai. So many details. It doesn't say, it's not written in the Torah, all the specifications that the tefillin have to be black. Has you ever seen anyone wearing orange tefillin or purple tefillin? You think they're going to pass the test? Even if someone's going to make counterfeit, they're going to make it black. But where does it say in the Torah that tefillin have to be black? So there's oral traditions, hundreds and thousands of them, that describe all the details of how to make this kosher. And they're not written. It's an oral tradition. And even if someone was going to try to make counterfeit tefillin, he's going to make them black. He's not going to make them purple or rainbow color. So this is easy way to identify. There's no possibility of counterfeit. People are trying, but the traditions of and people don't even try because there's no way that you can put it off and get away with it. Like how many people are trying these days to counterfeit dollars? It happens once in a while, but nobody's going to pass as a Jew. You have people going, we are the real Jews. Well, do you have tefillin? Do you have a tradition of making tefillin? There's people that maybe they are descended from Jews in certain places of the world that got cut off, and they lost the traditions of how to write tefillin and how to write Sefer Torahs, and how to make good parchment and all this. So they're very welcome to join the Jewish people. Maybe they are real descendants of Jewish people, but so long as they don't have decide, they can't claim to be the authentic Jews, because that is up to God to decide, and it's written explicitly in the Torah. So there are, in total, 3 of the commandments that God says that this is a sign, an oath that this person is Jewish, and the 3 are tefillin, Shabbos, and bris. Bris milah is the covenant of circumcision. So today a lot of Gentiles are also circumcised, but the reality is that the distinguishing factor is not just the cutting off of the foreskin. There's numerous other mitzvahs related to prohibitions for a Jew that if he acts accordingly and upholds those laws, for example, refraining from relations with his wife unless she's purified in a ritual bath in a mikveh. So that becomes part of the distinguishing factor of the covenant of the bris milah of the circumcision. And Shabbos too, there's a whole tractate on the laws of Shabbos. So for someone to really be observant of those laws and even just to know the laws, that's also a sign that is Jewish. I would say all the people in the world that know the laws of Shabbos and observe them, there's anyone who knows the laws and observes them. That's what God said. That's a sign. That's a sign. There's nobody that knows the laws and is observing them that is not Jewish. Not to say that there's never been an impostor, someone disguising himself as being Jewish and getting away with it for a few months or even a few years, but eventually they get caught. So this is something very clear, impossible, especially with tefillin. It's so obvious and impossible to make a counterfeit Jew. So these tefillin that were written in Poland 150 years ago. So it was my great-great-grandfather had a scribe write them for his son, my great-grandfather. What's outstanding about these tefillin, they're a little larger than their normal size because my great-great-grandfather, his name was Dayan Itzikl from Kleineradymischl. That's a little Jewish town in Poland. And so he was a dayan, which means a judge. He was, to say he was expert in Jewish law. And so he got the best tefillin that you could buy in that time and location. So these were extra large it's a whole thing because the back in those days, manufacturing tefillin with the 4 compartments that you have here is very difficult, challenging work to do. And one of the challenges is that it has to be all made from one piece of leather. And so it has to be formed in forms. And so what they would do, most of the people, to make it easier and cheaper, they would take a thin piece of parchment and shape it into the shape of the 4 boxes, compartments. And then they would take pieces, thicker pieces, and glue them in together to give it the structure, strength. To make the boxes out of one piece of leather without gluing in pieces for strength, you have to do a thicker, much thicker leather. So that was a very challenging thing to do back in those days when we didn't have all the equipment that we have today. So, but the tefillin, so these high quality tefillin back in those times, they were larger. Then they were able to manufacture the cheaper style of tefillin, which is also kosher, but not as ideal. So that's the special thing about these tefillin. So it's a clear thing. We have 150 years ago, even though they were doing it in Poland and they were doing it wherever Jewish communities were living in the dispersion of, after the exile, God decreed that we're going to be dispersed to the 4 corners of the world. So Jewish communities always had scribes. And if a Jewish community didn't have a scribe and they weren't able to bring in the stuff from other places where they had scribes, so eventually they got lost from the Jewish people, because that's a distinguishing fact, part of what makes a person Jewish, is having tefillin.
So the question is, who is still the owner of the land? Or does the land never belong to anybody? Or is it Black Americans? Is it Africa? Who does the land belong to? There's been a back and forth, and the journalist exposed a lot of things. He talked about the Israeli prime minister, that he came from Europe, and he does not even practice Judaism. So why shouldn't they want to do DNA? Because he was saying indirectly that he does not believe in doing DNA because he's never from that region. That's a bit very hard to bite, very deep, right? But of course, you had some of the rabbis, who are saying that DNA can only trace back to 500 years. That it may not really determine far back to Abraham's time, time, that DNA is limited. That's the first time I'm hearing that, actually. I'm like, oh, is it true? So guys, is it true that DNA is limited? It can't go far back, more than 500 years back? I'm hearing this and I'm like, let me go search and know how true it is. But hey guys, let's talk about it. The land passed through the Nile River, the Euphrates. I've also had a lot of content creators, researchers say that the Nile River that is being talked about is not the one that is in Asia or the Middle East. There's another Nile River that passed through Africa, that came straight down from Egypt down, and it passed through West Africa, East Africa, West Africa down. That's the Euphrates River, and a lot of stuff are coming up right now. And some are saying that white folks knows the truth, or white folks knew quite all right what was going to happen. And a lot of stories were brought up to confuse people as to knowing which river is being talked about. There's another school of thought that says that Black Americans are the true Israelite, or they're part of the tribe of Israelite, and that the Israelites are actually divided everywhere, all over the surface of the earth. And that if the land that is being talked about passed through Africa, that it might be that Black people are actually the Israelites, and that they are scattered abroad. And one of the places they were scattered to is America, which happened to be the Black Americans. Well, I'm just saying all of these things from what I've read, what I've seen, And another school of thought said, if you lay your hands on the African map, the 16th and 17th century map, that talked about the Guinea area of the western part of Africa, said the tribe of Judah was written on the map. So another school of thought was saying that, could it mean that some part of Africa that migrated from wherever they migrated from, I don't know, could it also mean that they are also part of the tribe of Israel? Well, I'm saying all of these things so that you guys can begin to converse with me at the conversation. What did you know? What have you read? Black Americans, Africans. And some are saying, and that's why I've had this word, it is not all Africans that are Africa. Have you got it? It is not all Africans that are Africa. In other words, it is not all Africans that you see that are truly from Africa. Maybe some migrate from, I don't know where they migrate from. But guys, what do you think about this? Why is this interview happening now? Maybe maybe 1 or 2 years ago. But the video has been everywhere on social media, and it looks like there's something that is fishy. Something is fishy. Some things are happening, some things are hidden. And this got a lot of people to be talking like, what a real Israelite? Could it be Black Americans? Could it be the Black people? After the descendant of Abraham, they're not, Abraham himself is a Black person, he's not white. Do you get it? Anyway, guys, I've said a lot of things. Let me know what your thoughts at the comment section. Let us talk about it. Your opinion counts, your views and perception count. And of course, don't forget, this is Qesholls. Watch, subscribe, like, and share if you love this great content. Thank you, guys. Until I come your way again. Bye for now.